what is the right attitude to be with someone who is depressed? My feeling is that it is very difficult to have the right attitude. And also, I experienced that when I was depressed in the past, that it was very difficult for the people who loved me and who were around me to be with my depression, to be with me and my depression. And basically, the only attitude that helps, that really helps, is to stand next to the person with the depression, to stand next to the person and to be with the person, to be there with love. And that's the only thing that helps. The tendency is often to try to pull the person out of the depression. And this is felt by the person who has the depression as a burden, because they themselves feel already ashamed and guilty often for the depression, and they already try to come out of it. And when someone is trying instead of them, it takes away their dignity and their respect for themselves and their strength. And it gives a burden. It makes them even feel more shaky and shrunken. So when you look, when does the person have most dignity and strength? When he or she comes out of the depression themselves, or when you would have done it for them? Because I say would, because in the first place, it's not possible to do it for the other. And what is often not seen, and what the person with the depression also doesn't see himself, is that the depression has a function. There is a standstill which is necessary, and often the person even needs it to go even deeper to the bottom of the darkness and the bottom of the misery, to be able to feel when this person is at the bottom, what are really his or her roots of life. And then it's an insight from within, and the person who has gone down to the bottom can then put his feet on the bottom and push himself or herself up towards life or towards the light. And for the person who is around the person with the depression, it's often very confronting, because it also touches something inside of them. So it's also important, when you stand next to a person with a depression, to feel what does it touch in you. And it's important to stay yourself. So the tendency is not to show your happiness, or that your life is flowing to the person with the depression. And that is felt by the one with the depression. So it's more beautiful to share your own life. Then the person feels dignified and equal to you. So you can say that you feel happy, or that your life is flowing, if that is the case. And you can also once in a while share how it is for you to be with the depression of the other, that maybe you feel the other is pulling you down, and you are sure that you stay there for the person, that you love him or her, but you want to stay, but that is also affecting yourself. And for me, it also helped when, at a certain point, my sister one of my sisters, became very angry with me because in my depression, I was very negative. When someone said something to me or did something, I immediately felt it as not enough, or that it was wrong what the other person said, or the person didn't understand me in the right way. And then suddenly she became very angry from her roots, and she said to me, look, nobody can totally understand you, and always someone will make in your eyes some mistake. But nobody is perfect, and nobody can understand you as you are. Only you can. And her anger gave me so much because I felt she is right, and also I felt respected because she was angry. And at another moment, she was there with me again to drink coffee or tea. That was the most nice for me, just to drink coffee or tea with the other and be there in the daily activities, or that the other person did some small shopping with me. But most of all, drinking coffee or tea together. Also, someone who was really honest with me was Mira Hashimoto. She led the art therapy training I was following. And when I entered her group, we had a sharing round. And I said, I feel depressed and socially totally isolated. And I knew that Mira loved me. And then she said to me, just look how you are doing it, how you are scaring people away from you. And that was really like a Zen stick, someone who she hit me with a loving kind of stick. And then I started noticing, I knew I can look. Now I'm in a group of 25 people, and I started noticing that I always thought that others are happy and me not. I always thought that someone has to give me everything. Like when someone just smiled at me, I thought, oh, he should also have come to me to be with me. But I couldn't appreciate that he had smiled at me. So slowly, slowly, I started getting insights in how I behaved. And all these things I describe also in my book, Depression, a Stepping Stone Towards Bliss. And this book, this book I can really recommend. I write in this book my own depression autobiography, and I share what has helped me to come out of the depression. I also made a podcast episode, I think it's episode 3 of my podcast, From Pain to Being, about depression, about this book. And what I also write about is that the depression can be really needed also from the level of the soul. It can be that when you are born, that you have somehow deep down decided to touch in this life the rock bottom of darkness, of pain, of misery. And that is a deep longing, an unconscious longing that is needed for growth, for your growth. And Pamela Krebe writes about this in her book, Dark Night of the Soul. And this I also mentioned in my book. And I myself can see that it was needed for me in my last depression to go even deeper to the bottom. And so if you try to pull someone out of his or her depression, you can take away something from the person, because the person can need it to go even deeper, and only the person knows. So what can also be helpful as an exercise when you worry about someone, and in this case, worry about someone who is depressed, you can imagine that you are standing next to the person who is depressed and you look at a big light at the horizon, a big light, your life light. And you imagine that the person who is depressed and standing next to you is looking at his or her life light, a big light at the horizon. And both you standing there and you look at your own life light. And as soon as you notice that you start looking at the person you are worrying about or looking at his or her light, what it will be, you immediately bring yourself back to looking at your own light. And when you do this exercise, you can feel what difference it makes. Once I was giving a lecture about my book, Depression, A Stepping Stone Towards Bliss. And there were people present who were very much worried about their son and brother. So there was a mother and there were a brother and sister of this man who was depressed. And I was very touched by their love, by their wanting to hear or find something that could be helpful for their son and brother. And then I did a small family constellation. I asked one person to stand for the depression. And one person I asked to stand for the people who wanted to help the depression, the person with the depression. And one person I asked to stand for what is needed for the depression. And then what turned out was that when the person who represented the people who wanted to help and to pull the person out of the depression, when this person came closer to the depression felt more wobbly and very insecure, more insecure, and he felt less and less strength, and he felt very suffocated. And the person who represented what was needed for the depression just was standing next to the depression, and that was very beautiful for the depression. And the depression felt more space and relieved and more strength also. So in that it was very clear that when you want to help in the sense of pulling someone out of the depression, what you're really doing, you are taking away the person's strength and dignity. So this was what I wanted to say about this subject. So in the description below this movie, I write the link to my book, and I write the data about my podcast. And you are most welcome to share in the comments below this movie what is your experience or how you experienced what I said, if you want to.